Alright people, so welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our current affairs lecture series. So you all know this by now that we cover current affairs week-wise. In every lecture, we cover 1 week's current affairs from a particular subject. The idea behind this lecture series is that you cover your current affairs subject-wise. That way, it will be easier for you to integrate your current affairs with your static portion. And in one lecture, we will cover 1 week's current affairs. So in 1 month, you'll have 4 lectures with respect to current affairs from one particular subject. Okay, this is the idea. Now, today we are going to cover geography and environment related current affairs. So all the important news items with respect to geography and environment from the past 1 week shall be covered in today's lecture. So without further waiting, without further delay, let's straight away dive into the lecture. Let's begin. So current affairs, geography, environment, June 2026, part 2. As you all know, every month has 4 weeks and we are covering weekly current affairs. So well, for geography and environment, for the month of June, there are going to be 4 parts, but that you already know. Now let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover in today's lecture. What happened in the past week? So these are the topics. Number 1, arrival of southwest monsoon in Kerala. On 4th June, southwest monsoon made its first arrival in Kerala. You all know, as far as mainland India is concerned, monsoon first arrives in the state of Kerala and then it goes to the rest of the country. So we'll talk about this, okay? Then we'll talk about El Nino global alert and how is India preparing itself for that. India's strategic shield. We'll talk about this. Then, well, World Environment Day is being celebrated and the conference for World Environment Day is being hosted by Azerbaijan. Now, why is Azerbaijan significant? What is happening on this World Environment Day? Okay. And what are the contributions of Azerbaijan? You talk about this. Then, well, Uttarakhand in India became the first state to incorporate gross environment product. We are all familiar with GDP. Well, we are now in this age of climate change. We are now also experimenting with giving monetary value to, well, nature. Okay. So gross environment product is that. We'll talk about this. And then we'll talk about a strategic tunnel called the Zojila Tunnel, which improves access to Leh Ladakh from Srinagar. So we'll talk about the location, strategic location of Zojila Tunnel, this grand infrastructure project. Okay, so these are the 5 news items that we shall zero in our attention on. So let's start discussing them one by one, starting with topic number 1, and that is arrival of southwest monsoon in Kerala. Now you see, you all know, if you have studied geography a little bit, that monsoon season is now underway. And monsoon winds carrying moisture from the Indian Ocean will drop it through rainfall in India. This moisture that is carried from the Indian Ocean is dropped in India through these monsoon winds. Right? Now, monsoon winds first hit Kerala. Now, remember, we are only talking about mainland India. Well, monsoon winds have already hit Lakshadweep and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. But as far as mainland India is concerned, well, monsoon starts from Kerala. Monsoon winds hit Kerala first. Now, the usual timeline is 1st June. So, every year on 1st June, monsoon arrives in Kerala. Okay? But obviously, there are, well, delays, or sometimes monsoon comes early, sometimes it arrives late. Okay? There are some errors in this calculation by 2-3 days. Now, this time around, monsoon arrived in Kerala 3 days late. Now, here's a very important thing. You see, how does Indian Meteorological Department distinguishes between rainfall caused by local storms and rainfall caused by monsoon winds? This is really important because Kerala has been receiving rainfall for quite some time now, okay, even before June. But how do we distinguish that this rainfall is because of monsoon? It's not because of some local storm. This criteria that IMD, Indian Meteorological Department, uses is very important for us to know, understand, right? So let's talk about this very quickly. Okay then. So arrival of southwest monsoon in Kerala. Clear? So well, on June 4, IMD officially declared the onset of southwest monsoon over Kerala. The arrival occurred 3 days late. Okay. The 2026 monsoon season commenced under a developing global El Nino alert. We'll talk about El Nino though. But one thing you should know, that when there is El Nino, globally, El Nino phenomena is dominating, well, monsoon or rainfall in India is a little bit weaker. And because of this developing El Nino in the Pacific Ocean, IMD, Indian Meteorological Department, has predicted that this time around, monsoon is going to be little lower than usual. 90% of long period average. Okay, so if India receives 100 centimeters of rainfall, for example, through monsoon, this time around we are going to receive 90 centimeters. Okay, so there is going to be deficient monsoon, which is not good news for India, by the way. Okay, nonetheless, let's talk about, well, the criteria. How do we basically decide whether this rainfall is because of monsoon or not? So IMD's tripartite onset framework. So IMD basically looks at these three things. Now, number one, rainfall, 60% of 14 stations register. Okay, so there are 14 weather stations all across the western coast. In Kerala, in coastal Karnataka, okay, there are 14 stations. 60% of those weather stations should receive more than 2.5 mm of rainfall for 2 consecutive days. If for 2 consecutive days, these weather stations all spread out all across Kerala and southern Karnataka, coastal Karnataka, receive more than 2.5 mm of rainfall in 2 days, well, qualification number one is, well, there. Then number two, well, winds are blowing west because monsoon arrives in Kerala from west. We'll look at the map also. The speed of the wind is really high. That means monsoon is blowing really high, really fast. So this is the thing. Okay, minimum speed 15 to 20 knots, and at this pressure pascals. And then we look at long wave radiation, ongoing long wave radiation. What is long wave radiation? Well, sun heats up the earth. Then when earth cools down, it releases heat in the form of infrared radiations, also known as long wave radiations. Okay, now these long wave radiations are picked up by our satellites. Okay, that's how we know that the earth is emitting heat, through these long wave radiations. But if long wave radiation that is being picked up by satellites is lower than usual, that means that these long wave radiations are being blocked by cloud cover. Okay, and dense cloud cover occurs during the monsoon season. So if the long wave radiation values are lower than 200 watt per meter square, that means there is a thick cloud cover. And thick cloud cover generally occurs during the monsoon season, cumulonimbus clouds. Okay, so these are the three qualifications that need to be looked at. Now the question is, again, they can ask this question in your exams. Why Kerala? Why is Kerala the first state to receive monsoon rainfall? Take a look at this map. Well, monsoon winds start from here and then they move eastwards. Okay, and then they move eastwards and then they hit Kerala. And after hitting Indian landmass, the monsoon winds get divided into two branches. One branch hits Kerala, okay, causes rainfall and starts moving along the Western Ghats. And then the other moves along Bay of Bengal, hits northeast and then moves towards the northern plains. Okay, that's how things go. But the first state to receive monsoon rainfall from the western direction is Kerala. It's because of the movement of monsoon winds. And the monsoon winds take a right turn because of Coriolis forces. But we'll talk about this in the geography lectures. Okay, so why Kerala first? Oceanic positioning. Then Western Ghats over here act as natural barrier to these monsoon winds. So they block monsoon winds. Because they block monsoon winds, these monsoon winds rise upwards. When they rise upward, they cool down and form clouds. And these clouds condense and cause rainfall. This cooling of monsoon winds as they move upwards along the Western Ghats is known as adiabatic cooling, because the winds expand, the air expands, cools down and condenses. So these are the three reasons why Kerala receives the rain. Why Kerala is hit by monsoon winds. Okay. Now, didn't I tell you that this is the year of El Nino? And El Nino always brings deficient rainfall. Deficient rainfall is really bad news for India. Why? There are three things which get impacted. Okay, what are those three things? First of all, Kharif agriculture. Kharif is the monsoon season. This gets impacted. Okay, then food security and inflation. So this is bad news for farmers. Then if farmers are suffering, food security suffers because the yield for crops would be low. Supply of food would be low. It would be lower than demand. And when demand outstrips supply, there is inflation, food inflation. plus India's dams and reservoirs for water. Low monsoon rainfall fails to sufficiently fill central and southern river reservoirs, which are generally used for drinking water and irrigation purposes. Because if there is not much rainfall, these reservoirs would remain empty. This is really bad. Okay, so this is basically the impact of lower monsoon. Okay, by the way, this last column is about way forward. The second column is the problems because of low monsoon, and this is the way forward, what needs to be done in case of lower monsoon. Clear? So do take a look at this table from your notes. All right then. That would be all as far as the first topic is concerned. Now let's quickly shift our focus to next news item, and that would be El Nino Global Alert and India's strategic shield. So World Meteorological Organization has announced that this year there is 90% probability that there is going to be a super El Nino event. Now, simply put, El Nino means abnormal warming of the Pacific Ocean. Now, you might think that Pacific Ocean is getting warm, so it should impact the nearby countries. But no. Whenever Pacific Ocean warms up unusually, then what happens? The entire world's climate gets impacted, including India. Now, there is 90% probability that this year is going to be a super El Nino event. So what happens during El Nino? Monsoon is deficient. Winters are hotter, summers are extremely hot. It is a warm year for Indian subcontinent. Not good news for India, right? So in this topic, we'll talk about El Nino in brief. Okay, how does it happen? And then its impact, and then what India is doing to counter it, to protect itself, right? So let's begin. So El Nino Global Alert and India's strategic shield. So this is the announcement that was made by World Meteorological Organization and America's National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. This update confirms that 82 to 90% probability is there that there is going to be an El Nino event. Because of this, Indian Meteorological Department also announced that this time around, well, monsoon is going to be deficient. Okay, now let's talk about El Nino. So this is the El Nino event. This area of the Pacific Ocean becomes extremely warm. Now, why does it become warm? What happens is that generally trade winds are blowing. Winds are blowing at very fast pace. They take the hot water towards Australia, and from the bottom of the ocean, the water rises up. Now, bottom of the ocean, the water is cool. Okay, so hot water is taken to Australia, and cooler waters from the bottom of the ocean rise up near South America. This is a normal event. Okay, but during El Nino phase, what happens is that these trade winds become unusually weak, or sometimes they reverse their direction. So warm water gets accumulated over here. Okay, this is known as El Nino, very warm water. Okay, and this impacts the entire globe's climate. Now, why have I written ENSO over here? Look, sometimes there is El Nino event. Sometimes the situation is normal. We call it neutral. Okay, and sometimes unusually cold water comes near this area. This is known as La Nina. Okay, so sometimes it's this, sometimes it's this, sometimes it's this, and this happens in a cyclical form. This is known as El Nino Southern Oscillation, because this is oscillating between El Nino, neutral, and La Nina. That is why this entire thing is known as El Nino Southern Oscillation. Clear? So this is the mechanism. Now, how does it impact India? Okay, there is agricultural stalling because of weakening of monsoon, because nearly half of India's net sown area is purely rain-fed, dependent on rainfall. A weaker monsoon delays the sowing cycles and threatens the eventual yield of crucial kharif crops like paddy, cotton, soybean, pulses. Then, farm input costs also rise. To compensate for the lack of monsoonal rain, farmers scale up groundwater extraction. This triggers a sharp increase in input cost. Why? Because to extract groundwater through tube wells, your electricity costs increases. Okay, so this raises farm input cost. Plus, overall, well, farm economy gets destroyed. So there is loss in GDP. Rural economies get destroyed. And when rural economies get destroyed, well, remember I just told you supply of food is lower than demand. Yes, so there is food inflation. So the entire country suffers. GDP is low, inflation is high. This phenomena is known as stagflation. Stagflation is economic stagnation, GDP is low, and high inflation. Weird phenomena. Very low GDP, very high inflation. Stagflation, stagnation plus inflation. This is the risk that India is running. Now, what is India's strategic shield? What has India done to protect itself? First of all, to solve for inflation, India has already created a buffer stock of pulses. So even if there are yield losses, we already have a lot of food grains and pulses in our godowns. Okay. Plus, there are on-demand emergency plans that have been put in place by the Agricultural Ministry. District level plans are there. Crop swapping. Farmers are being advised to sow less water intensive crops, not paddy, grow pulses, because they don't require that much water. And reservoir buffer. Already, most of the reservoirs, tanks, water tanks, which provide irrigation and drinking water to much of South India, they are at 127% of their capacity. They are full. So even if there is deficient monsoon, water reservoirs would take care of water needs because they're already full. So India is prepared for this event. But let's see what happens. How severe the event would be, let's see. Right? Okay. Now let's quickly shift our focus to next news item, and that is World Environment Day 2026. That is being celebrated through a conference in Azerbaijan. Now this conference is being organized by UNEP, United Nations Environment Program. And on this occasion, UNEP has also launched certain strategy to combat climate change. Basically, they have said that instead of looking at high-tech technology to solve climate change, we should focus on nature-based solutions. Okay, nature-based solutions, natural solutions to solve climate change. Now, what we will discuss is, well, what is World Environment Day? Okay, why is it significant? Why Azerbaijan was chosen to be the host of this event? What is so significant about Azerbaijan? And how the nature-based solution framework given by UNEP is significant for India. We'll talk about all these things. So let's begin. World Environment Day 2026 hosted by Azerbaijan. So this is the context. Observed globally on June 5. Remember this date. June 5 is World Environment Day. Was officially hosted by Azerbaijan in its capital city, Baku. So you need to remember a few facts. Who organizes this day? UNEP, United Nations Environment Program. What was the official theme for 2026? Inspired by nature, for climate, for our future. Basically, that's what they are saying. Nature-based solutions, not high-tech solutions. Nature-based solutions to solve climate change. Global campaign focus. Urgent scaled up global climate action driven by primary mobilization. Hashtag was now for climate. We need to act now, otherwise it is going to be too late. Historical landmark. World Environment Day traces its origin back to the 1972 Stockholm Conference on Human Environment. It was celebrated for the first time in 1973 under the inaugural theme, Only One Earth. So the first World Environment Day was celebrated on 1973. And the first conference on climate was in 1972 Stockholm Conference. So remember these facts, by the way. Now, why Azerbaijan is important? What is Azerbaijan's climate footprint? So how Azerbaijan has been acting as far as its climate change policies are concerned? Well, Azerbaijan was the host of, Climate Summit, Earth Summit, COP29 recently. And in this summit, it secured landmark frameworks on climate finance, money needed for climate change. Then World Urban Forum Integration, the host was Azerbaijan. Advanced Low Carbon Smart City Systems for Heavy Urban Grids. And now it is the host for World Environment Day, pushing for nature-based solutions at scale. So this is Azerbaijan's contribution. Now, you all know that location-based MCQs are asked in your exams. So you need to be aware of the map-based location of Azerbaijan. So here it is. So Azerbaijan lies in kind of Central Asia. This is Mediterranean Sea, Turkey, and this is Caspian Sea. As you can see, Azerbaijan is bordered by Armenia, Georgia, Russia. Clear? And a little bit by Iran also. Clear? So remember these border countries. And it shares its coastline with Caspian Sea. This is really important. Clear? Now, one more thing. Well, Azerbaijan has been focusing a lot on climate change. It has given various targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, there have been a lot of actions taken by Azerbaijani government to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve renewable energy. They have done a lot to reduce plastic use also. And Azerbaijan, because it is near Caspian Sea, well, Caspian Sea is witnessing deteriorating quality. The amount of water is shrinking. So Azerbaijan is also worried about that. Okay, so this is the thing. Now, what has been presented by UNEP? Well, UNEP says the policy document released by UNEP is cheaper, cleaner, unstoppable, clean technologies that are delivering for climate change. Okay, nature-based solutions. Basically, that's what they have, the document that they have presented. Now, nature-based solutions, why are they important for India? Well, this is there. Himalayas, because glaciers are melting and these glaciers are India's water lifeline. They feed a lot of rivers, Ganga, Yamuna and all. So this is there. Plus, India is witnessing urban heat island effect. If we talk about the top hottest cities this summer, well, there were many Indian cities. It's all because of urban heat island effect. India's coastline is shrinking and agriculture is suffering because of climate change. So these are the 4 reasons why India should worry and India should focus on nature-based solutions. Now, this last column is the way forward. It is given in your notes, this table. So this way forward is really important for your mains answers because you are supposed to write way forward or solutions. Your answer should be solution-centric. So do take a look at this table, really important. Do take a look at this table from the notes, right? And now let's quickly shift our focus to next news item, and that is global environment product. Sorry, gross environment product. Now here's the thing. Well, we all are familiar with GDP. Yes, and every country wants to target GDP. Basically, every country wants to increase its GDP. Now, to increase GDP, you have to add more and more industries. Now, the thing is that a very high GDP is good economically, but it can be harmful environmentally or the quality of life the citizens are living. How? Well, you're adding more and more industries. You're not at all focused on what would be the impact of those industries on the environment. Okay, you're just singly focused on GDP. Because of that, you don't care about whether your industry is polluting nearby river or not. Clear? You're only focused on increasing GDP. Now, what if, as soon as there is a new factory, you calculate the amount of contribution it is making to the GDP, but that new factory is also polluting the nearby river. You also calculate the monetary loss of that environmental damage and you subtract it from the GDP. Okay, that way, well, your focus would change. Okay, if you want to improve your overall well-being, you would want that, well, my GDP should increase without damaging the environment. For that, apart from GDP, you need a new index, and that is gross environment product. Okay, now what is it and how Uttarakhand has taken a lead in this, and why is Uttarakhand significant for India? Let's talk about this. Okay, so gross environment product. Basically, Uttarakhand is the first state in India and globally to move beyond traditional environmental auditing. Now, what is GEP? Simply put, GEP is basically GDP minus environmental damage. Okay, and if you have improved the environment, then this would become plus environmental promotion. Okay, but GEP is this. Now, if you're targeting GDP only, you won't care about the environment. But if you're targeting GEP, you'll care about GDP also, you'll care about environmental damage also. You would want this entire thing to grow. So you would try to increase your GDP with minimum damage to environment. Okay, if you're targeting GEP, improvement in GEP, that would lead to sustainable development. There is development, but it's not harming the environment. Right? So target GEP if you want to go for sustainable development. That's what Uttarakhand has done. Now, GEP has a history. This concept was first given by someone, you need to know his name. Then in India, this concept was given by someone, you need to know their name also. So let's talk about the concept of GEP. So GEP was originally conceptualized in 1997 by ecological economist Robert Costanza at the global level. Well, he established this concept to establish a natural capital accounting framework by integrating ecological benefits into GDP. Now, this formula was adapted to Indian context. The formula and foundational advocacy for Uttarakhand's index were spearheaded by environmentalist Dr. Anil Prakash Joshi, who's the founder of HESCO, Himalayan Environmental Studies and Conservation Organization. Now, what is Uttarakhand's GEP? Well, Uttarakhand's GEP index basically targets four things in the environment. They calculate a forest GEP, they calculate a water GEP, they calculate a soil GEP, they calculate air GEP. Forest GEP talks about how many trees are there. If there are rich forests, GEP would rise. If there are poor, it would fall. Then water quality, availability of water, both quantity and quality. Then soil quality, then air quality also, air pollution. Then what you do is you add all these GEPs and then you get your composite GEP. So forest, water, soil, air are added and then you get a composite GEP and then you adjust it with your GDP. Simple. Okay. Now, why is it important? I mean, what is the importance of Uttarakhand? Why is Uttarakhand important? Okay. Well, Uttarakhand provides the entire country with ecosystem services. India survives. India's climate, India's nature survives because of Uttarakhand. First of all, 71% of Uttarakhand is well covered with forests. Okay, this forest wealth is estimated at 95,000 crores, which is a wealth for the entire nation. This is there. Plus, Uttarakhand is the origin point of many rivers, Ganga, Yamuna, Sharda, which basically nourish the entire northern plains. This is there. Plus, well, using this GEP and not GDP, Uttarakhand is going for sustainable development. Uttarakhand is the first state to do so. Okay. So by this, Uttarakhand is leading by example, where other states would also follow. So Uttarakhand is contributing in that regard as well. Clear? Now, what are the benefits of using GEP over GDP? First of all, bureaucrats get rewarded if their area's GDP increases without caring about the environment. Now their whole mindset would change. Instead of GDP, they will target GEP for promotions and all. This is there. Then, fiscal federalism. States must lobby the Central Finance Commission for special grants on arbitrary criteria. Now states can lobby to receive more funds from center based on their environmental contribution as well. UK will do that. Uttarakhand will do that. So this is a good example. And developmental balance, basically this talks about sustainable development. Don't just target economy, target environment plus economy, sustainable development. Clear? And yes, there are some criticisms by environmental activists. These are very simple to understand. They are given in your notes. Just take a look from that. Clear? And now let's quickly shift our focus to next news item, very small, and that is Zojila Tunnel. Now look, the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir had three regions. Okay? The Kashmir Valley, the Jammu region, and the Ladakh region. And the reason why this entire old state was divided into these three regions was because of geography. Okay, the Kashmir Valley is separated from Jammu Plains because of Pir Panjal range. Okay, and Kashmir Valley is separated from Ladakh because of Great Himalayas, Himadri. And you can only cross these mountain ranges through passes. So to come to Kashmir from Jammu, you need to go through Banihal Pass. To come to Ladakh from Srinagar, you need to go through Zojila Pass. Clear? Now, Zojila Pass is really different, really difficult to traverse. Plus, it gets closed during winters. So your reachability, if I can use that word, to Ladakh during winter months was, well, not there. Now you have created this tunnel through the mountains, connected, and you have connected that tunnel to Srinagar-Leh highway. Now, the first initial phase of this tunnel is complete. This tunnel is called Zojila Tunnel. When it gets completed, it would give all-weather connectivity to Ladakh region from Kashmir Valley. This would be useful for our defense forces because, well, from Ladakh, we straight away look towards China. Okay, so this would give a big boost to our infrastructure preparedness for, well, facing China. So defense preparedness for development of Ladakh region, because now you have accessibility all year around. So you will supply essential food items or essential items to that region. So it's a win-win thing. And it will also give boost to tourism economy in Ladakh also. Right? Now, Let's talk about this. Let's take a look at the map and the benefits. So this was in the news, Zojila Tunnel. Okay, it was inaugurated. I mean, the first phase. This is how Zojila Tunnel is. This is Srinagar Leh Highway, and this is 14.2-kilometer long tunnel across the mountains, through the mountains, and then you reach basically Leh Ladakh. This is really important. Now, what is its geography? The main tube cuts beneath the treacherous Zojila Pass on Srinagar Leh National Highway. It physically connects Sonmarg in Gandarbal district of Kashmir Valley with Minamarg in Ladakh. Well, this is the altitude and this is the global distinction. Upon public commissioning, it will be world's longest single tube bi-directional road tunnel in the world. Clear? Now, its strategic advantage, well, national security and defense, because then there is all-weather connectivity. Our forces can reach Ladakh throughout the year. Transit efficiency, it would reduce transit time, okay, transit time, traveling time. This would give a boost to economy, giving essential supplies, socio-economic integration also. Now, throughout the year, people from Ladakh can come to Srinagar and from Srinagar to any part of the country, and vice versa. This will be a big boost to tourism and other parts of the economy as well. So win-win situation. That's how infrastructure helps the country. Hence, this tunnel is important. Okay? And that would be all. With that, we conclude today's session. So thank you so much for watching, everyone. And I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. I'm sure about it. But it will add more value if you're number one, consistent and regular with this lecture series. And number two, you revise this lecture from the notes provided by us, because otherwise you'll forget these current affairs. So you need to consolidate these current affairs in your memory by doing a quick revision from the notes. Now, these notes can be downloaded from our Telegram channel, and the link to our Telegram channel is provided in the comment section below this video. So do check that out. All right then. On that note, I shall take your leave with the promise of seeing you again with another lecture in this lecture series called Current Affairs. Thank you, everyone.